Would you like to dance with us? Questions about the working culture of a self-organizing stage. A self-organizing stage is not only a concrete working environment where a creative team is working towards a performance and where this performance takes place. It's also a concept that allows us to think about the ethical dimensions of working together. This makes it simultaneously a concrete environment with all its elements, as well as a concept which we can utilize to reflect on the grounds and relationships on which the work is based on. We are interested in working together in a space where the conditions for doing things are not set in stone, but which can constantly live and change according to the situation. We are also interested in starting points where the authorship can exist without ownership. Where there is no single author, there is shared authorship.
Vous avez dansé avec nous?
Today we approach this topic with the concept of corporate culture, familiar from organizational theories. It's changed into a working culture, but the starting point is the same. We always act from the basis of our personal assumptions, ideology, worldview, etc., and these assumptions always shape the concrete working environment. The correctness of a working culture is always determined in relation to what the organization wants to be and what it intends to achieve. The best way to lead a working culture is to define clear organizational values and to lead the organization with and through them. Those values must always be true to the organization, and everyone must act as a role model for these values. This kind of exemplarism is usually always associated with leaders who own the organization culture, although every member of the organization are always active creators of it. In this particular context of ours, it is everyone's responsibility to exemplify it. Our self-organizing approach needs leadership, but leadership is decentralized and horizontal. Quote, "A leader is not needed, but leadership is needed." End of quote. The working culture is thus the way the organization and its people operate and is based on the organization's concept of human being, the world of values it represents, and the cause and direction of its existence, and where it's heading to. And because the functionality of a working culture is always determined in relation to the organization itself, it has to be considered in its specific context. Our context is Danco, School of De-colonizing the art of dance. When we draft a new working culture, we need to contextualize it properly. We can't think of a singular performance or a process where the self-organizing stage will manifest in, and so our context is performing arts, and in particular Danco School of De-colonizing the art of dance. Danco is a new group, a gradually building organization and a context in which the theory of a self-organizing stage will be the starting point and basis for dance works and other related activities. As we now consider and reflect on the self-organizing scene, we are also creating the values of Danco. This essay is not a comprehensive analysis of our values, but a first suggestion, a draft of shared direction as a group. It is about two core values that contribute to creating a working culture that not only helps us create this new ensemble, but also helps us build a self-organizing stage. The first value, trust. Quote, "Trust is the first rule of human interaction that has a positive or negative impact on people's choices and behaviors." End of quote. Harisalo and Miettinen, Luottamus, pääomien pääoma. Trust is a very fundamental element in person's life. No wonder then that Harisalo and Miettinen brought it out by saying trust is the first rule. Levinas has similar views, stating that ethics is the first philosophy. According to Levinas, ethics doesn't provide content for philosophy, but ethics serves as the basis for the significance of the human existence. According to David Innerarity, a Spanish writer and philosopher, it is hospitality that creates the conditions for the coexistence of people, and thus it is the basis for a person's social life. According to him, one is always a stranger and the other is a host in a society. This setup is realized in every encounter, or at least every interpersonal situation can be viewed through this concept, and one can contemplate at what kind of togetherness and ethics this idea produces.
Voulez-vous danser avec nous?
Hospitality is interaction that requires acceptance of otherness and acceptance of autonomy of the other. According to Innerarity, we must learn to interact with the other. This autonomous other should be able to question our knowledge and be different from what we ourselves would like or expect them to be. This interaction is essential because the self is always born in relation to others. We don't develop in a vacuum alone. The gradual development of the self requires trust, which happens when the parents respond to the child's needs and the maternal-paternal bond is being created. The self evolves in interaction and is not something that already exists at birth. It then produces an idea of one's needs that help produce words and later life plans. I am a self in relation to those conversation partners and encounters who, in their time, decisively helped me to define myself. Trust is present at all times. Do I dare to share my own work in progress? Is it possible to bring out raw ideas, intuitions, or should there always be a completely finished idea, a product that has been polished to perfection? Will others hold me accountable of the flaws of an unfinished idea, the incompletedness of it, or will they start brainstorming the idea I brought up? In a community where there is trust, people dare to work together and have will to work for the good of the common organization. Panu Luukka says that this is when, quote, people want to invest their most important treasure, their passion. The second value, diversity. In his book, The Coming Community, philosopher Giorgio Agamben writes of a man who has no worldview and no biological or social function. Against this background, a self-organizing stage opens up in front of us as a space and situation where everyone's personal interests, customs, tendencies, and habits come to the fore. They emerge to be known, to be re-evaluated. They become more concrete, forming a diverse bunch of materials to be used or not to be used. Like this, we make visible the fact that a stage can be filled with any material locally with people who have just come together on their terms and on the basis of an agreement they have built in collaboration. In their article, Tuomas Martikainen and Elina Moisia write that the rhetoric of diversity is primarily about expanding the content of the concepts normal and ordinary. According to them, the purpose is only to highlight, quote, features that are always present in human communities but are left behind, which, unidentified, we still have an effect on our actions and may lead to unequal treatment, end of quote. And this is important in our context. How to recognize and bring forth these underlying features that still exist and can lead to unequal treatment. In order for diversity to materialize, we need to dare to scrutinize the situation that is born when people come together to think about what we could create together in a context of self-organizing stage. It is an ethical situation that allows us to gradually become aware of the structures shaping us and varying othernesses that each of us possess. The principle of intersectionality is simply that none of us represent only our gender or any other single feature. In this context, none of us also represents only our supposed expertise, artistry. This allows us to create a situation where we make hierarchical setups visible in order to dismantle them. In this performing arts context, it's easy to imagine and value a working culture that would allow one to reach beyond their own assumed and primary expertise. Not only is it permissive for diversity, but it allows the creativity of the whole community to emerge. Accepting diversity provides opportunities for perspectives that cannot be realized by an environment tied to strict preconditions. Diversity is not just that we work with different kinds of people, but that working together produces a space that can affect the person themselves, and that effect can shift the way they experience themselves. It can have a profound effect on myself and my experience of myself. Working together is a process that produces changing subjects. In this state, displacements, changes of direction, i.e. subjectification, occur. Common space is a state of subjectivism and requires the utmost ethics to allow change to happen.
But this draft, which is what you're hearing now, sounds nice and all. Now, we should bring out the questions that we promised before, a tool to structure a self-organizing stage. But we have a problem. We did an exercise. We filmed it. You're watching the footage of that exercise. This exercise was supposed to be just for fun, dancing together with the villagers of Grand Popo, a village where some of our members are spending 3 months at the Villa Caro artist residence. The question posed by the dancers is easy and light, and at the same time, as it is, deep and difficult. The question was simply, veux-tu danser avec nous? Do you want to dance with us?
That question is really the same one that sets up Danco. It calls for doing things together. But why is it a difficult question? Because everyone we asked that question had supposedly a different idea of what dance is. When we ask them to dance, that dance is a completely different thing for us than what dance is for these villagers, some of whom dance all the time, for whom dance is a part of everyday life. And some of them don't even think they are dancing because they don't distinguish between music and dance, but dance is described by the term music. There is music everywhere, and almost everyone makes music, i.e. dances and sings. When we ask people to join the dance, we ask them to join our state, our understanding, a space filled with our assumptions.
However, it was fun, and we assume everyone who danced did it of their own free will. For us, the situation produced a question: how to get another person involved so that they have an idea of where they have been invited. How to produce a situation where the invited person is not trying to settle for something supposed, but contrary can be a part of creating a common, yet uncleared culture of working together.
When we operate in a multicultural environment, we need to think about how to allow a voice of another if they don't have a language or context in which the voice could be heard or understood. For example, someone coming from a situation they never could use their voice or express themselves freely. Can a self-organizing stage really be a context in which anyone's voice is heard?
How to build an ethical situation circumstance in which participation is not determined by, for example, whiteness, but that the construction of the situation is open and created together with the participants. In this way, specific rules for the particular situation could always be produced, keeping those rules always open to change.
Spivak writes about ethical singularity, which seeks to take into account the specificity of people and cultures, the differences between them, and the contextualities. It is clear that since individualities are never fully divisible, explained, or translated into another, the emergence of an ethical situation requires that we establish a reciprocal relationship with the other. Quote, when the answers go in two directions, we are close to ethical singularity. End of quote. Spivak.
Now, the question is, how can we ensure that everyone's voice is heard, that everyone's body